What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 111 of the Steam Deck Podcast, Flip Screen Games' weekly gaming podcast, all about Valve's portable PC powerhouse, the Steam Deck. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined as always by my very good friends and co-hosts, Mr. Steven Radford.
Hello, hello.
And Mr. Max Wright.
Ahoy, ahoy.
Ahoy, ahoy, boys. Full steam ahead.
Full steam ahead.
Yeah. Well, I guess I was trying to think of a white pun, but I can't. That's like deck related. So yeah.
All right, that's my task.
You gotta throw me that earlier. Now I'm on the spot, and I'm like, I should be getting us into the episode, and my brain is just going through the Rolodex of like, how could you make this a pun?
Yeah. Well,
yeah, I'm drawing blank.
Oh, there you go. See, just say it in a French accent, and it might be in there.
No, I'm not doing that.
The wind up, and your lips curled. And it's like, oh, okay.
I was about to do it.
So
I was
good.
about to ruin my whole career with it.
Oh man, that's one of the accents you can do. That's okay. Anyway, we're here to talk about something that I feel like I've been waiting for this episode for a while, which is we have a brand new colorway for the Steam Deck. Valve revealed that there's going to be a limited edition all white Steam Deck, and this is only our second colorway we've ever gotten. Pretty big news.
Yeah. So like last year, or was it last year or the year before? I guess we got the translucent one with the OLED model, which was gorgeous.
And only in the States, right?
That one was only available in the States. This one is available worldwide now, including Australia, which is a new region for them.
Shout out to our friends in Australia.
So you can pick this one up. It's a OLED limited edition, 1 terabyte model. Comes in white and gray, as Pete said. It's got a white carrying case and a white cloth as well. And as was the case with the limited edition that Pete picked up, it's $30 more than the 1 terabyte model. It's $679 in the US, and it will be around $30 or £30 more around the world, wherever you are.
Do you guys think that the limited editionness of it, the whiteness of it all, is worth that extra money? I know that it's like limited, but that you're not getting much more other than the limited color, right?
I think it looks really cool. It
does look cool. I do agree that it looks cool.
It's just like, do you feel like it's worth it? Is the question?
Yeah, is the extra £30 worth it just for the color to be different?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like that is a very much the values in the eye of the beholder thing, because I think like I could say the same thing about folks who go through the trouble to like buy a custom case or get a wrap or something else to adjust the style of their deck, right? And it's like, is it worth $100 and all the work it takes to do? Well, if you want it to look really sick and have a unique style, then yeah, it probably is worth it to you, right?
Did I tell you guys that I wrapped my Steam Deck?
No.
And it lasted 4 hours before I ripped it off, because I was just like, I hate this, really hate this. Like,
what didn't you like about
it? It didn't feel right. It didn't feel like a Steam Deck in my hand. It was like almost like slippery. It was too shiny. It was distracting. I didn't quite get the corners perfect, so it was like slightly sharp on the corners.
I will never ever use a wrap for anything for exactly that reason. Is like, I know I won't lay it exactly right, and it'll drive me insane.
Yeah, one little crease and I'd be freaking out.
Yep.
Yeah, or you get like the bubble and then you start picking at it and then it's scratched. Yeah. No, I can't do that.
I waited like a week for it to arrive. I was really excited by the colors, and I got it out and I spent ages putting it on, and I was like, oh, cool. And
how much was the wrap, Max?
I want to say I got it on a sale, and it was like £20, and that was on sale, so it was more than that at the time.
I'm gonna go ahead and say yes. I think the $30 is worth it then, because you spent $20 for no result. And
yeah, but that is a more unique wrap, right? That we don't know how many of these limited edition white ones they're doing.
Yeah, but I mean, how many is it gonna be, right? Like, it's like let's say it's like
50,000.
Sure, even that though. It's like, so there's 50,000 in the whole world. It's like, that's not that many. Like, that's still a pretty limited edition thing. Yeah. And again, it's like, do you care about that sort of thing? Do you care about limited edition? Do you like, or maybe you're somebody where like, oh, like I have a PS5 and I have a white tower and I got the OLED Steam Deck and that's white and I want all my consoles to be white. Like, if you're somebody who is like, this is how I felt about the one last year, right? Where I was like, I'm such a sucker for the translucent late 90s, early
Yeah,
aught
that one's really
style
cool.
of like clear plastic, and I love orange. Like I love like hot orange on technology. So I was like, this is so to my taste that it's like, yeah, like I'll spend the extra money to have this special,
I mean,
limited
you
version.
did get the slightly nicer case with it as well, like the limited
The
edition
reverse
case.
Yeah.
removable bits as well.
It also
it's like-
has it has a little Velcro like lip on it too, so
Yeah.
that like you can close it over and shut it without zipping it every time. It's like, again, is that like a make or break feature? No, but it's like whatever for $30
They're
bucks.
giving you a little bit more than just the color. Like you are
Slightly
getting
quality.
custom accessories with it, which I think is cool.
You saying about having the white PC, the white console has reminded me that if you were going to build an all white PC, I'm saying all white, not yes, all white. It is more expensive than just black parts. It is they are pricier because it is it's not the standard off the shelf thing. They've got to source it. It's rarer, and it does actually cost more to make, or sorry, it costs more to buy or build a white PC because of that. It is a more limited thing. So I now understand why that is, I guess.
I think I spent like $10 more on the white version of the case I have for my computer rather than have the black one because I wanted it to be white. So yeah, it's like, I don't know, like
That's the Corsair 4000D Airflow, right?
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I specifically went for the black one because I was like, this is a little bit cheaper, and I'm doing this in a blind panic, so I'll get the cheaper one.
Fair enough. And that's the thing, right? Is like I think that sort of thing is like, it's totally like, if somebody was like, why would you like, I'll just get the black one, like I would for $30. It's like, yeah, fair enough. I think that's a totally reasonable position. And I bought one, so obviously I don't take too much issue with it.
I think there's two types of customers there, because you bought that one at launch. It was an option when the OLED model launched. You could choose to pay up and get the limited edition model. I probably would have done the same if it was available in the UK. It wasn't, so I just got the standard OLED model, and I didn't even go for a terabyte. I was like, there's no point. I'll just get the 512. Whereas this time around, it's like we're a little bit further into the Steam Deck's life cycle. We don't know when another one is coming. This could be for collectors or people who just want to get a different color, in the same way that we know people who have multiple Nintendo Switches, like Chewy, for example. He collects them. We know Pete's had multiple PlayStation 4s. He had the Spider-Man edition. So it could be that people want to do that. I kind of feel like the people that are going to get this most, though, are people who are in the market for a Steam Deck for Christmas and are just like, oh, the white one looks fucking cool, and I'll get that.
I think there's also, to that point, I think a lot of folks like who are like on the fence for stuff like this, like artificial scarcity, like encourages people to purchase things. Like, I mean, if you're somebody who is at all paid attention to how Nintendo sells things, like think about like when Amiibo came out, right? Like it was like there was this sense of like, oh, like they're getting into toys? Like that's kind of weird. That's interesting. Like some people were excited. Some people are like, what are they doing? And then as soon as it was like, oh, you know how they like put out like 5 of them? 4 of them you can't find anymore. Like they're just, if you didn't get one, like you're screwed. It was like, what? Like that started that whole culture of waiting for a drop and getting a pre-order. And like if you think you can just run out and get something at any time, there's no sense of urgency, right? But if it is like you can't find this, then you get into the habit of like, oh, like, well, if I want a white one, this is my only chance. Or like, well, I was going to get one anyway, and if I buy one now, I'll get this cool limited edition one instead of maybe I'll get one at Christmas, or maybe I'll get one next year when I get my tax return, or whatever justification you're waiting to make a big purchase. This is the kind of thing that I think motivates people to be like, oh, okay. Like, because to your point, I may not have upgraded to an OLED at launch, day one and date, if there hadn't been a limited edition model that I was interested in, right? I might have waited for the holiday. I might have waited for another time to make such a big investment. But it's like, well, like if I miss this window, am I going to be disappointed? I may as well get it, right? And I think a lot of people get sucked up in that kind of thinking. I think anybody that has even the slight collector tendency, right? It's like, it's cooler to have something that's limited edition than not, right? Like I did that with like the Xbox 20th anniversary controller. I did that with just the PlayStation anniversary controller, because it's like,
oh, I'd have loved the anniversary PlayStation.
It's cool.
Really
it's a cool
I had
thing.
one pre-ordered, and I thought, I'm not going to have a PlayStation by the time this arrives, so I cancelled it.
Yeah.
Oh, Max, that is silly. Even if you didn't want it,
Could
He
just
could have sold that.
yeah, he could have just sold it.
They were easy to get, aren't they? Are they
No.
not?
No,
easy to
they were like.
Oh, you on about the controller?
Just the controller.
No,
Just the
I thought you
controller.
meant the console. No,
No,
I
I'm
love
not
the
an
Oh
idiot.
console.
no. I mean, the controller was still hard to come by, but the console was like they made like 40,000 of them or something. I forget what the number was. It's a ridiculously low number.
The console, that is a perfect example of how limited editionness can sway people, because all of the internet reaction to the PS5 Pro and all of my friends who were talking about PS5 Pro were like, what a ridiculous piece of kit, what a ridiculously silly.
And then they
no
show
one
that
wants this
one.
for nobody. As soon as they announced that, all of a sudden it's like, well, maybe if I just sold my PS5, it's only £400 on top of that.
Yeah.
But also, like, maybe I need to get the whole set and the matching PS Portal. And all of the people who had previously, I'm calling you out, Ben, Laurie,
Damn.
all of you people who
We're just adding
like,
people.
what's the point? I don't get it. Yeah, were like, oh, I need this desperately, and then the even online the perception changed, and people were queuing up and they were trying to get it, and it was
Oh,
like, damn,
dude.
this is the console that was rinsed 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, like friend of the show, right? Like Ken, he did that. Like he was like, dude, this thing is way too expensive. What are they thinking? And then when they showed the limited, he's like, well, I mean, if I get one, I get one, right? Whatever. I'm not gonna go out of my way for it, but if I can get one, that's why I got a PS4 Pro. You mentioned the Spider-Man one. I wasn't gonna upgrade to a PS4 Pro, and then they're like, well, there's a Spider-Man one, and I was like, well, all right, fine, sure, that's
Yeah.
cool.
We're all suckers, aren't we? We're all just fucking. They know exactly how to push our buttons. And it's
Definitely.
just, you go, do you remember this from 20 years ago? And you're like, I do remember that from 20 years ago. And you're like, well, it costs a bit more. And you go, oh, whatever, I don't care.
There's this tweet that lives like rent free in my brain. Is this guy Mike Drucker? He's a comedy writer. He like worked at IGN back in the day and stuff. He tweets about games a lot, and it was like in response to a Nintendo Direct, and I don't remember which one or like the context of it, but he's just like, hello, we're Nintendo, and we hold all the keys to the only happy memories from your childhood. And it's like, yeah, like that is a winning formula, you know? It's like, yeah, and I mean, like, this isn't nostalgia, but it's the like, it's that sense of being
Damn
like
close though. It looks a little bit like the 40th anniversary PlayStation with that grey.
Or the original
maybe.
Game Boy, like an original Game Boy.
Yeah,
feel to
that's
doesn't
true. It does
Like
kind of have that look to
The
it.
darker buttons, the lighter grey. Can I quickly nitpick while I'm looking at it and
Yeah,
remember?
yeah.
Matte white, gorgeous. Matte grey sticks, matte grey triggers. Mwah.
Yeah.
Mwah, delicious,
Take
delicious.
that orange button.
Why are those buttons? Why are the XBYA and the D-pad like glossy?
All the Steam
Just
Deck
make
buttons
it
are glossy. Yeah.
Yeah, but just make them matte. I want it to be matte. I'm saying nitpicky. It's not.
Yeah, I don't
massively
have an
important.
issue with it. I don't think. I like the feeling of the glossy button. I feel like a matte button is going to wear down. It's going to feel like a fucking keyboard key that's just
Guess
going to
you
get
do wanna
shiny over
split-
time.
Yeah.
You want to move between them, don't you? You do want to be able to sort of glide between.
Yeah,
X and
you don't want,
V
like,
or, you know.
A porous. It's like very like silly, but it's gonna slow you down. You know, it's like.
You don't want
You
white
want that
porosity
on the
because that's how you
back.
get the Cheeto dust in it. That's how
Exactly.
you get the. I reckon the amount of like flaming hot Dorito dust that's caught between the tiny little X's, triangles, squares, and crosses on the back of that PS5 controller is immense.
Oh, yeah.
There's probably so much of my skin just like on the back of that controller. Luckily, my brother has it now, and we have the same skin, so that's fine.
Does he also eat Doritos? So it's like
No, we're just twins, so I assume that that's
okay.
what that means. We have the same skin. But,
Yeah, that's how that works.
he
Apparently,
probably does eat Doritos. He probably
he
does eat
probably does. Incredible. Yeah, it's funny. Like you said, the Game Boy. I looked at this and like it immediately reminds me of the Wii. Like that,
Yeah,
like early
yeah.
aughts Nintendo. When they had the like gray logo for a little while, and like they had that very like.
I hated that grey logo.
It's
it was
very
so
like corporate
lifeless.
looking. Yeah, it's like
which
very
is
like.
bizarre 'cause that's when they were at their most like we are family.
Yeah.
And they went like real corporate. But I guess that was the time. That was the era. I'm glad they've embraced red again. Like,
It's
I'm really
funny
glad.
though, because I kind of feel like they were ahead of that trend. Because I feel like now that's what all like every website is like. Our new logo is black and white, and there's
Flat.
no
It's
flat, and there's
flat.
no shadow, and no curve, and
Yeah,
no
but I like
color.
that.
And...
I like that now Nintendo's like, oh well, we're the cutesy
No,
thing.
no.
I mean, look,
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's funny though that like they were kind of ahead of the curve on that, and then they
Yeah.
switched back as everyone else was doing that
weirdly
now.
though, like the interface on the Wii was totally like antithetical to that.
Yeah.
look with the logo. It was just like, oh, cute bubbly buttons and like little TV screens. It was like
Cute little cartoon guys running around. It's
a
like
little hand that moves around, like you're downloading a game, and it's like,
right, of like the TV had like the curve to it, and
yeah,
it looked like a screen. Yeah,
it was like all sorts of cool stuff that was going on in there. But
Yeah.
I looked at this and it reminded me of I don't know if you guys remember, like years ago, back in 2021, it was at the it was like the Valve Developer Summit. They showed off a Portal themed Steam Deck that had like the Aperture logo on the back.
That's cool.
I kind
I
of
was thinking if you had like a yellow, orange trackpad and a blue trackpad, that would look like a Portal.
Yeah, you could have easily made this like a little bit more Portal themed. Like put the Aperture logo on the back. You could have made like the button a slightly different color, like a blue color or something, or maybe had like the orange button there, and then maybe have like a different button on the console, the blue
You
color.
could have an entire one like all of the D-pad control stick Steam button, and then the select button could all be orange, and then ABXY, the other stick, could all be blue. That'd be nice.
Is that a thing that you guys like think we'll see eventually? Like because I know they like have a specific thing in the blog post here where they're saying like, this is a limited edition or release. We will not be making more of this particular design. Once we're sold out, we'll be sold out. Is like, now that we have like a second example of that, do you guys think this is like a thing they're gonna do like once a year, where like they roll out?
I think so.
A random
seasonal thing.
Yeah,
I like that. I like that they can go away, experiment, come back with some cool new colors and just maybe stuff that they had in the bag anyway, and it makes it feel fresh again. And it's another news cycle for them. It's really good to like, get the Steam Deck out front and center.
it is pretty cool to have like a model that is unique to the year you bought it too, and be like, I've been around since Gen 1 of the OLED, or whatever. I hopped on this year and I got this special one, and it's kind of cool.
I was going to say that to do it once a year removes that thing of like, I just got the Spider-Man themed one, and they've just done the 20th anniversary one. Oh, that's so annoying, because I wanted, that color or whatever. And I think it being once a year gives you more of like there's enough of a gap, like an air bubble around you buying it, to not then feel like you're missing out on the next one, I guess.
Sure.
Because you've already got your one, and your one is rare enough that you can't have picked up a week beforehand,
Yeah, and it's like it does like probably feel a little bit better when it's like, oh, this other limited edition one came out that I'm interested in. It's like, yeah, but I have this other cool one that you can't get. And I guess also like it does increase the resale value on them if you do decide that you want to sell it and get a different one, because it's like, oh, well, there's only, like, if you didn't get this one, like, that's that's the only way you're going to get it now.
Probably buy a limited edition one, sell it to buy the next limited edition one, and still make profit every year on this.
Yeah, right? You would think. I mean, I don't know like what the
don't be a dick and do that.
No, but I just like I don't know what the how much demand there is for these things on the aftermarket, but I could see that. And I think particularly like down the line, like if the Steam Deck becomes an institution and we have a point where there's a Steam Deck 2, a Steam Deck 3, whatever,
I
right?
hope it does.
And people
I
have
feel like that's inevitable.
I also kind of think that, but stranger things have happened. But I think if that is the case, right? Like if that's kind of where we're going, then it's like, yeah, I mean, like 10 years from now, when it's like, oh, like this is this limited edition Steam Deck that was available for fucking like 2 weeks in 2024, right? It's like, yeah, like I think that could be the kind of thing where there is like a collector's market and someone wants to get the entire set of limited, consoles, and yeah, it's like, I think a lot of people don't like this kind of thing and they get upset by it, but like for certain types of consumers, it's extremely motivating, right? Like it's no surprise to see them want to engage in something like this that adds that kind of like, ultra rare trading card, odds kind of thing.
I just think it's fun. I don't think people should be upset about it. I can understand.
It's harmless, isn't it?
Yeah, I can understand feeling hurt if you just bought one and it's too late to return it, and maybe you'd have been like, "Oh, I want the white one." But
I've said it a trillion times. You'll never buy anything if you keep being upset by the thing.
No,
Yeah, that's the struggle, right? Like the advantage of not being an early adopter is that maybe you get a better version of the product, maybe you get a better deal, maybe you get this, maybe you get that, but like that's the advantage we always talk about of being an early adopter is like, well, I had more time with it before there was an upgrade. Or
Yeah, it was easy for us to justify the OLED model because we'd had it for a whole year, or over a year at that
yeah,
point.
it was closer to 2 years at that point, right? Because I mean, we got them in the
we got them in like April the year before.
You and I got them like the first month they were available, right? So it's like, by the time that was an option, it's like, well, I've had it for almost 2 full years, and it's like, I do a podcast
and
about
I used it every day.
Yeah, it's like
talk about it. It's like this is my main gaming machine. It was so easy for me to go. Yeah, and plus I sold mine, and it was at that point it was like a £100 upgrade, I think. And I also upgraded from the 256 model to the 512 model. So it was like this is really not that bad. I mean, it might be a good reason for people to look at it this time around. So if you've got a 512 model, can you sell it and then put $150 towards this one? You're then getting the special edition model, and you're also getting that storage boost from 512 up to a terabyte. So there are like ways you could potentially look at it if you really wanted this one.
Not to mention they did just have that like pretty conveniently timed. Now I'm wondering if it was intentional, right? That interview that we talked about maybe a month ago or whatever, where they're like, we don't believe in doing annual hardware upgrades. Like it's a value thing. We don't want to have a new piece of hardware unless there is really adding value to the player, which like seemed to imply that the OLED model is going to be our, that's going to be what we have for at least the next probably 2 or 3 years or whatever, right? Maybe longer, who knows? But
they've spoken about it a few times, right? That they don't want to do another model. So there's a generational leap, that they feel like there's a reason for it and a need to. But you never know when that's going to be. It could be that next year is the year, then they finally feel like, we've got a chip that we can do a Steam Deck 2, or maybe it's 2026, or maybe it's 2027. Like, we don't know when that's going to come. I don't think there's going to be one next year, but then I didn't think there was going to be an OLED model last year. Maybe we get another refresh and they like slim it down, make it look a little bit different again. I don't know.
I kind of feel like no. I kind of feel like the OLED was the redesign, and then you're just gonna ride this model until it's time for the next one. That's kind of my gut feeling based on what they've said, but also,
depends what the competition's doing. Like they've got no real reason to at the moment. The ROG Ally X came out, and weirdly they went from the white ROG Ally to the black X, and now we've got the white Steam Deck. There was no real reason for them to do anything new. It wasn't really any kind of competition, unless
the only reason that Asus has to do that is because they don't make any money on the game sales, right? The only thing they can do is sell you another piece of hardware, whereas Steam can sort of sit back on what they've got, and this is just like for the fans, or just to tip people over the edge, I guess.
Yeah,
I've had a thought, by the way, while we've been talking. Sorry, I know you were about to say something, but
no, go ahead.
There's one other thing that this looks like, and it is 90s PCs, the off-white towers with like, I don't know, grey across.
I love the beige. I want a turbo button on there.
Yeah, it's got like that look to it, and I wonder if, I know technology has moved on, but I wonder if in like, I don't know, 10 years time there's going to be like yellow Steam Decks knocking about like there were the yellow PCs.
No, there won't be, sadly. Like that was that and like is due to the plastic that was used. When UV hits it, like leaks out some like chemical that makes it go yellow.
Also, there's just indoor smoking that's gone away.
That is, I'm sure, a non-insignificant part of it. Honestly,
I have like I have a weird hobby where I restore old keyboards, and like I've restored old keyboards.
Why am I learning this now?
And I like
Steve is a very interesting person, Max.
It's great, and you the best thing to use, hydrogen peroxide.
He's got a whole
hair dye.
He's got a whole website you've never been on, and he's got a guide on there where he walks you through how he restored a Mac keyboard.
Steve, I restored a pair of shoes a couple of years ago using hydrogen peroxide and OxyClean, and it was a
exact same thing, Max, and it works on the plastic.
Yep, you hold it, you put UV light, or you put it in the sunlight, Yep,
covering cling film.
I bought the shoes for £85.
Wow.
In 2012 or whatever it was, and they were from 2005, so they're already quite old at this point. They were yellow, they were beaten up. I cleaned them, I restored them, I wore them a bunch, and just a couple of weeks ago, I sold them for £300.
Wow, damn, bro!
And
that's cool. I'm impressed by that. Cool. I got to be honest with you.
That went straight on my tooth, but it was still worth it. It was still worth it.
It's so funny that just like, oh my God, that reminds me, this is like such a deep cut. That's probably for nobody but me, but I'm going to say it. There's like a throwaway joke in an episode of Parks and Recreation where somebody compliments Tom on being like savvy, and he's like, yeah, I sold my Chronicles of Riddick VHS, DVD, use the proceeds to buy the Blu-ray. It's like
I like that.
oh man. So yeah, this is pretty cool. I'm glad to see them get another one of these across the bow. I am a big fan of colorways and stuff, and
Me too.
it's
yeah.
cool. It's
Max,
a cool thing.
Though, Max might not be a big fan. We don't usually bring the predictions up on the Steam Deck podcast. That's usually for the Flip Screen Games podcast. But Max made
real quick, hold on.
Great prediction.
Just to give everybody the context, because I know a lot of you listen to this show don't listen to Flip Screen. Flip Screen Games podcast is one of our other 2 shows. If you like the show, please go check that one out. It's a great show. And we do a set of predictions every year in January that are our predictions for what's going to unfold throughout the year. And we do a whole big bet. We have a trophy. It's a whole thing. And it's a good time. Go check it out. And go ahead, Steve. Max made a prediction about just this exactly.
Yeah. It was that there will be a new piece of hardware announced by Valve. But I don't know if Max just brought this information forwards himself, brought this caveat himself, or if me and Pete forced it upon him. But we said excluding limited edition colorways. So
I feel like we asked him. I feel like we were like, do you mean this? And he's like, no, I mean that. And we're like, okay. I don't remember.
So lenient, and I don't know why I was so specific for some of these. It doesn't really matter that I've lost this one because I'm still going to win over one. I'm still wiping the floor.
Yeah, you are.
You're in a really good position right now. I'm not pleased.
I look forward to getting the Bessie trophy rebranded to the right trophy.
No. You don't rebrand the trophy. You just get your name on the trophy. That's how it works.
When the trophy's in my house, I can do whatever the fuck I want with it. Sorry,
That's true. You can.
I'm going to be Dan Timpson so quickly.
Oh,
yeah. Well, I mean, Max.
You got to watch out though. You're going to get your franchise disqualified if you tamper with it too much.
We need to come up with logos then for each of our little corners.
Oh, we should totally do that for next year. Come up with team names and stuff, and get somebody to draw us team logos. Ciara could do that. She'd do that for us.
Yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be fun.
I know. Ken wants to get in on it this year, so we're gonna have at least one more person too. So that'll be fun.
Yeah.
So go check that out.
Predictions are one of my favorite episodes. So if you don't listen to the Flip Screen Games podcast, go listen to it just for that episode because it's really good fun. We get to argue over stuff, and Pete gets to laugh in our faces. And
I've been crushing it. I'm
out of touch I am with the industry.
I'm the three. That's the thing. You're not. You just make bad predictions.
You know what? Half of my predictions come.
I know, but that's your whole
after.
problem. And I call you out on it while you're doing it. I'm like, bro, you're crazy. That's not happening in the next 12 months. And you're like, we'll see. And then you're right, but it's 24 months. And it's like, dude, you gotta swing for the fences a little less. Because
it's the way you say it, Steve.
You got that marathon one. That marathon prediction was insane. But then at the same time, you'll be like, yeah, the Nintendo Switch 2 is coming out 2 years ago. It's like, bro, you gotta pump the brakes. Pump the brakes on some of these.
I just went to find my predictions list to see if I specified the colorway or not, and I seem to have deleted them as I said them, which is stupid of me. But for some reason, at the bottom of this document, I have a half-finished acrostic of Imbessi that I didn't get very far in. I don't know why. I got as far as immortalized manhood because, and then just gave up with the last 3 letters for some reason. So I don't know what that was for. If anyone wants to go back and listen to the predictions episode and come back and tell me what the hell that was, I'd love to know.
Fantastic. I love the idea that you were working on it while we were doing the show. And you're like, this bit never came together. I don't know.
That's a good point. It might never come up, actually.
I don't remember you saying that, but it could be. Who knows? That's very funny to me.
I don't remember not specifying. I don't remember specifying not a limited edition colorway, but I know it happened because it's written down on the sheet. So.
Yeah, and I don't know. I want to go back and listen because I genuinely don't remember if it was we made you do that or what. But
I'll put it in the car tomorrow and I'll come back.
We'll see. I mean, I'm pretty pleased because that I think if we had given you that one, we'd be totally done. Right now, it's it's still a game, but you are in such a good spot. I really think this is. I think this is your year to lose now.
It could easily come true. We got another story we're going to talk about in a second. That's all about some other potential hardware. We don't know what's going on with Deckard. So there's like it's all to play for. I think next.
We'll
Like
see.
there could be something.
Still got the Game Awards, haven't we?
That's true. Yeah, so folks, speaking of which, the nominees for that are going to be out next week. We'll be talking about that on the Flip Screen Games podcast. So go check that show out if you haven't. So before we move on to our next topic, I do want to just quickly remind you guys, if you didn't catch our PSA at the end of last week's show, that the State of Steam Deck survey is still live this week over at Overkill. Our friends Chris, excuse me, I got tripped up. Chris Brandrick and Kevin Whammer. Chris, longtime friend of the show. Kevin's been on in the past too, but Chris comes on every year to talk about the survey results. He's been doing the State of Switch survey for Nintendo Switch for 8 years now, and we do a big debrief episode with him every year. And it's a blast. It's really fun. If you're into data journalism at all, or if you just want to help contribute to a friend of the show's project. We'll have a link down below that you can go and conduct the survey for yourself. It takes like 10 minutes or so. It's not very long, and it helps them out a lot. So go check that out, and make sure you get your questions ready for the episode when we have Chris and hopefully Kevin will both come through this time for this year. And go help our friends out. So, before we get into our next topic, let me remind you that this episode of the Steam Deck Podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of November. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valenz, Steve Stompy, Susan Likes Cats and also Boobies, Ty the Dude, Voodoo Vic, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. Y'all the realest of the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. Those shows being the Nintendo Noise Podcast and the Flip Screen Games Podcast. If you want to hear what's going on in the world outside of Steam Deck, and PC gaming, go check out those shows. They're a great time. We do a lot of AAA reviews and indie conversation and stuff over there too. So even if you are strictly a PC gamer, I think there's probably many episodes of the Flip Screen Games podcast that you will get quite a bit out of. So go check those out if you haven't already. And of course, flipscreen.games. That's a website where you'll get links to all the other places you can get involved. Come join the Discord, keep the conversation rolling between episodes. Head over to Patreon. You can become a producer just like those fine folks did, and help keep the show rolling. However you choose to get involved, thanks for tuning in for another episode of the show. Steve, take us into our next topic.
Yeah, so exciting story from Brad Lynch, who we've spoken about many times on the show. His reporting, his deep dives into Steam VR and the code base there, has found a code name, Roy. So seemingly another character from Blade Runner, not just Deckard in the code base. Now we've got Roy in there. And he says that he was told months ago that a Valve controller codenamed Roy existed and seemed to be far along in production. It was separate to the spiritual successor to the Steam Deck. And I was also told it was in EV1 stage at the time. Roy is now referenced in the back end of Steam VR. So EV1 is like when it gets to the engineering stage where they prove that as an engineering concept it works before it goes into kind of full prototype and then into kind of production. So looks like we might be getting some kind of controller. Considering the name Roy and Deckard and the fact that they're both Blade Runner characters, it kind of makes me feel that this is probably a controller for the headset rather than the spiritual successor to a Steam controller, which Brad has obviously said that he was told it was separate to that. So there may be another controller on the way. But what do you guys make of this?
You know I'm hungry for a new Steam controller. You know I am. It's been if I can't remember the name of the chap that's listening to all of the episodes from the beginning right now, but when he gets to this point in the show, he's
in like 2 more days because he's going through like 8 a day. My man is just churning through them.
He's absolutely gunning for it. But he will know that we have said, I don't know, dozens of times, Steam Deck Controller 2, Steam Controller 2, Steam Controller 2, Steam Controller 2. And even when they announced that shitty horror one.
Whoa, we spoke about that horror one last week, and me and Pete both were just like, yeah, this is kind of cool.
Looks all right.
Or are you joking?
No.
I don't think we did. Yeah.
I don't think it looked shitty.
We spoke about it on launch, and I thought, it's a shame. Like every new piece of information I learned about it, I was like, okay.
My biggest gripe with it is I think the battery life is not very good, but
we found it was double the PlayStation 5's.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
Which is still not very good. By the way, that That listener is Rotten Dots over on Discord.
That's the one. That's the one.
Very active lately.
Very active.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm kind of inclined to think that you're right, Steve, because I feel like the fact that like we just had that Hori controller announced and released, it's like, why would you partner with someone on a controller that you were involved in, like, if you had your own proprietary one right around the corner that was going to like fill the exact same niche? It just doesn't make a ton of sense to me. That doesn't mean it doesn't make sense at all, because Valve already has a more, non-traditional approach, right? And like, like they're going to let people run SteamOS on other devices, right? So it's like that whole, they don't have like a very like walled garden approach. So like, doesn't necessarily mean that that's the case, but given, the timing of the announcement, the naming convention, like, it does seem like what you're suggesting makes the most sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit more information actually. He's still kind of digging deep. So since we started recording, he's found some more stuff. That he has dug a little bit deeper, and that the Valve Roy controllers that he's put an S in brackets have at least a D-pad, bumper, grip buttons, triggers, ABXY system button, and some sort of strap. So I think the strap makes it definitely seem like it's a
like
VR
it's
controller,
a handheld thing. Yeah,
and Deckard, which was removed from the Steam VR code base, is now back. It's back in the latest Steam VR beta update, Deckard is there. There's stuff with the eye trackings back in, so looks like we might be ramping up to some kind of announcement.
I gotta be honest with you. I think it's so weird that they're putting out a VR headset. Like, I know I'm like a big like VR hater in a lot of people's eyes, but like, I just like, where's the market for it, right? Like, it's like we've seen so many VR headsets come out in the last couple of months and just like flop, or not months, I guess, years, and like not meet expectations. And it's like, I just don't understand why they think it's gonna. And I guess maybe.
What if it's compelling enough for you that you were saying this about the Steam Deck, right? That you were just like, I don't get it. Like, what's the point? It might be the Deckard comes out and you're like, holy shit, that actually is a really compelling use case.
I hope you're right. I hope I eat my words in the same way, and we start a VR podcast about it because it's so fresh. But I just don't know, man.
Because the Index was the only place you could play Half-Life Alyx. That was it was the first VR that had like a killer app, and that killer app was.
Well, you could play that on any headset you plugged into your PC. So you could play that on the HTC Vive. You could play it on the Quest 2.
Oh no, I thought you needed the five fingers controllers, and then they then made it more accessible later on. Am I wrong?
I think you're right, Max. I think it came to other hardware on PC later.
No.
I think you're right.
It required those because that's why it was so like you could do all the drawing stuff and you could do all the picking up the thing. It was all so fluid because it had that 5-finger sensor controllers. So that was only how many years ago was that? 4 years ago that the Index came out? Am I wrong?
No, the Index is old at this point. The Index was out way before Half-Life Alyx.
That game came out in 2020, I think. Because
I'm
pretty sure it was during.
It was 2019. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that came out during lockdown, if memory serves.
I think you're right.
So yeah, I mean it's in hardware time, it's a long time ago, right? Like it is.
I mean, even in VR terms, like a lot's happened since then. Like we have full inside-out tracking, whereas the Index needs beacons in order to track you properly. You need to put them up in a room somewhere. So if you want the full set, it costs like $1,500 just for the headset controllers and the beacons.
I just feel like the other big change that's happened in VR is that there's been a total drying up of the market. It's like, I mean, we don't have to point to like, even like sales numbers or anything of some of these other devices that have like come out and like maybe not necessarily like set the world on fire. But I'm talking about like even just like studios, like, it's like there's a lot less studios making VR games, and it's just like.
I mean, Meta bought them all up, and that was a big problem. They flooded the market with cheap headsets that they were making a loss on in anticipation that this was actually going to go somewhere with the metaverse, and then they've given up on it.
Right. But I mean, even take that out of it, because I mean that's definitely a part of it. But like, there are a lot of studios. Like a great example is like Resident Evil, right? The last 2 Resident Evil games had a VR mode. It's like I don't I wouldn't assume that that's going to happen for the next one, because it's like,
Well,
what's the financial return on that? Like,
yeah.
you
I
know?
mean, PlayStation was presumably funding. They are funding the VR mode for that, the latest one, right?
I don't know if they did they might have for both. I mean, that was a big thing on the original PSVR. Was like when 7 came out, it was like, whoa. It's
I
like,
think we're still awaiting it for Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, no, I think it's out now. But
No, I think
it's
it's
only.
yeah.
It's also it isn't exclusive. There is the original Resident Evil 4 VR is on everything. I'm pretty sure, but yeah, that is
I think you're right.
exclusive to PlayStation. I'm pretty sure, much like 7, we're never seeing that anywhere else, which is a shame.
But yeah,
Yeah,
anyway,
especially considering if you want to play that now, you need to quickly buy the adapter for VR1 because they're not giving you those anymore after the end of this year.
yeah, that's just like, I guess my question is like, even if this comes out and it is a really compelling piece of hardware, right? It's like, how is it not going to run into the same problem that like PSVR 2 did, right? Where it's like, you go look at reviews of the hardware when it first came out, and people are like, I mean, yeah, like it performs better than Quest and these other ones in these categories, and it has this, but like, where are the games?
Is, though, it's Valve, right? Like, they don't need to sell in the same way they don't need to sell as many Steam Decks for it to be a success. They don't need to sell as many Decades for it to be a success.
Yeah, that's definitely true. That's
the
definitely
VR2
true.
has to sell millions in order for them to recuperate costs and for it to be seen as a success by Sony.
For it to be worth it to stay in that business. Yeah.
You know, Valve might sell 100,000 of them, and they'll go, you know what? We've now also sold 100,000 more copies of Alex and 100,000 more sales of Beat Saber, and we're getting 30% of those profits as well. And like, you're going to keep using our ecosystem in order to play VR games.
I guess that's my question though, right? Is like the immediate example you had was, so you're going to buy this new VR headset to play games that worked on the old one?
Well, I'm sure they've got something fresh, something new.
Maybe, but it's like, is that it? Like,
I also kind of feel
Alex is the only VR game they've made, right? So it's like, even if they have one other like killer like app, it's like, is that enough at a time where like people have less money to spend? And like we've talked on all the shows.
I think it's enough for Gabe to want to do it. He's passionate about VR and he owns the company, so it's just like,
fair enough.
If it kind of feels like it's his pet project, his VR.
And I guess that's the thing, is like the metrics for success for Valve are just different than other companies that were conjuring up examples for, and like maybe that's it. Like maybe they can corner the market on VR by being the only ones that stay in the game, as other bigger companies that want a multi-million billion-dollar success story are like, all right, like this, there's not as much blood in the water here, and that they can make it work. Yeah, maybe that is the thing, right? But like,
plus you benefit from a huge, you much like the Steam Deck, the size of the library you suddenly have access to when you buy a Steam Deck, and same with PC VR. All of a sudden, you've bought this thing. You don't have to wait for games to come out like on the PSVR 2, or you don't have to hope that games are on Meta. They are absolutely 100% going to be on Steam.
Backwards compatibility and all that, right? So if you were
already own one,
right?
Like you own Hitman, you've already got a VR game. You've probably already got something in your library.
Hellblade, great VR game.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just I'm really a skeptic when it comes to VR, because I feel like the first wave of like mass market VR products were closer to 10 years ago than 5 years ago. And
what about like the use case of rather than it being VR, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know you were interested in like the glasses you could plug into your Steam Deck. What if it's like, I put this thing on my head and it automatically connects to my Steam Deck, and then my Steam Deck games are there in front of me on a 50-inch screen, and I'm on a plane, and it's like I'm blocking the world out and I'm just focused in on my entertainment.
Yeah, and I don't know. Like, I think that's like an interesting idea in theory, but it's like, how much does that cost? Right? It's just like, I think we're at a point right now where like, we've talked about on all of the shows, right? That report from a couple months ago about how, this really huge percentage of time spent in video games in the last year was in old games. And, like, I don't think people are like ready to rush out and plunk down a couple $100 or $1,000 on a piece of hardware that they know they're not going to get the same level of use out of as.
I would agree with a couple of thousand, but I think the Meta Quest 3S is 275 quid, we're coming up to Christmas. I kind of feel like that is going to be a big seller again.
Yeah,
I
maybe.
think if they can be bullish on the price in the same way they were with the Steam Deck and get out a VR headset that's a few $100s, maybe it's the same price as the base Steam Deck was, $399, $349, and it's like, oh, you know what? I loved the Steam Deck. This is the perfect companion for it, and maybe you buy the Roy controller separately.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, maybe, but it's like and again, like I can only base it on like conventional wisdom and things that have come before, and like that's not a fair metric to judge it by. That's what I did with the Steam Deck, and I was wrong there. I'm totally willing to admit I might be wrong here. But the Valve Index was $999 at launch if you wanted the entire like the whole pack, which was the headset, the controllers, and the base stations, right? If you wanted just the headset, it was $500. I have a really hard time thinking that this thing can be both a step forward in VR, that can be the platform that allows them to make the next Half-Life Alyx, that's a killer app that pushes VR forward, that proves why you need to buy a VR headset 8 years into this, trend, whatever you want to call it, that's clearly in decline.
I call it an experiment at this point.
Sure, yeah, that I think is clearly in decline, right? Like, I just don't know. I don't know, and like,
I think they can hit the price point. I think they can. I think there's ways
300?
they can do it.
400? That seems really low.
$399. No, I think they can do it for 400. Look at what they've packed into the original Steam Deck.
Yeah, but
now they've got a lot of experience building hardware en masse. They've got distribution channels all around the world.
Yeah,
they can get these products out.
Those are good points. They are more primed to do something like this, but I don't know. It's just like I can't imagine you're selling it at that price point without selling it at a loss, and I don't think that you're gonna make your money back the way that you think you are, because there is just not. Like I said, like there's been a huge trickle in the number of VR titles that come out, how much they get talked about, how much they get promoted. All those things have taken a major nosedive. I think it's really clear that the expectations for what VR was going to be as like a mass market consumer product just didn't pan out. And not that it never will, but now of all time seems like a really weird time to double down on a VR headset to me, because there are just so many examples of how the market is in decline, and that like if you're not willing to bankroll like dozens of games to come out on this thing, that like you're going to be asking people to even if you're right, and let's say it's $500, we'll split the difference, right? And that's the affordable price point they can swallow. That's still a lot of money for something that is going to maybe have like one game come out on it a year that is like really truly relevant. I don't know, like that just seems like such a tall order. And like I know that like the PC market are enthusiasts, they're more willing to spend money on hardware, they're more willing to spend money on experimental things. Maybe that's the gamble that they're taking, is that like this is where VR really thrives, and that it is through having more community stuff, maybe stuff that's like relying on user generated content, like that there are these other ways that you can incentivize people to get value out of it. And maybe that is like having functionality that with the Steam Deck and using it as a second screen, things like that. Maybe that's enough, and it's that simple. But yeah, I have a hard time thinking that they're going to be able to design this thing in a way that it is a major step forward and also half the price of the original.
People like to be a part of an ecosystem as well. People also, the only option they currently have for PC VR that's really worth it, I would say, is like the Quest 3 or the Quest 3S or whatever, because it's a standalone thing that you can plug into your PC and use that way. If you don't want to be a part of that Facebook ecosystem, you don't want to give Meta any money, you don't want to have a specific Meta account, you don't want to play games like in the way that they do, you want to be part of Steam, you want to use your Steam library, you want to have connectivity with your Steam Deck in some way, you want your controller to work quite easy, blah, blah, all those things. I can see why that would be an attractive thing for them to put out and say, hey, PC VR, this is it. This is your only option. It's either that or the Meta Quest. And I can see why that would fit in at your price point, Steve, because the Meta Quest is that price point. Granted, I'm sure Facebook makes a lot of, shades a lot of that on. Once we've got you in there, we can also sell all your data, and there's ways to make it
but Valve can also be like, once you're in there, we're going to keep selling you games forever.
Exactly. Yeah. And then once you have the Deck, and you might buy a Steam Deck, and once you have the Steam Deck, you might buy a Deck, and blah 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 blah. I do think there is. I do think it's more. It's not as easy as like, oh, why they're releasing a VR headset. It's because there's only one thing that currently does that for PCs right now, and it's not the option that a lot of people want, and it's not the option they're being marketed at really anymore. Because that's all. A lot of the stuff with the Meta Quest 3 and the 3S is it's AR heavy. It's they're still almost like pushing like a metaverse thing of like have an avatar. It's all family friendly. It's connect to your friends. It's cool.
Even like all the marketing is very like this isn't just for games. Like it's not for nerds.
Exactly.
Right? Like everybody.
Yeah, it's so ridiculous. Yeah.
Whereas if you want to it's the same reason why PlayStation has released their bit for PSVR for the PCs, because they're like, oh, there's a market there that we don't want to lose out on that. And if Valve can come out and say, oh, look, you don't have to spend however much it costs for a PSVR 2,
And it'll be wireless.
Exactly, yeah, and you don't have to have all of the downsides of the PSVR 2 as well, where you lose out on so much functionality because there's certain things that only work on the PlayStation. So I can see why that would be attractive, and I can see why Valve would want to be the people that do that, because everyone else has given up.
Maybe you're right. I mean, the PSVR 2 is $550.
Yeah, and I think they can get it under that. I think they can. I don't think it's going to have the same resolution screens. I think they kind of bring that down a notch, but it's seemingly got eye tracking in based on the data mining, so we know that that's a match with the PSVR 2, and that eye tracking doesn't work on PC with the PSVR 2. That's one of the things you lose. So it'd be nice to have that. That's now baked into Steam VR, so maybe it does come to the PSVR 2. But I kind of feel like Valve is poised to own the market for VR in the same way they used to. They kind of lost out to the Quest 2, and that was just super, super cheap, and everyone was just like, oh, VR, 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 and they just snapped them up for like $2.99.
And the Quest is a great product. I'm not slating it at all. I just know there are people who are turned off of it for various reasons, and like you say, it's not nerdy enough, it's not gaming enough. Even though they do have some great exclusives, and they have they have the pedigree of they bought Oculus. Oculus was the PC VR, and I feel like they have pushed.
They were like the first major VR product, right? Like the Kickstarter for that was like what kind of kicked off that whole generation.
Yeah, the Oculus was it, right? And then you have the Oculus, whatever the Rift,
the Rift
S, and they were like the ones that were the big ones. And then as soon as Meta bought them, and it was like Metaverse this, and I think they have pushed a certain audience away.
I guess that
audience can only get it through Steam, if they want that.
I guess that's an interesting question, and maybe one of you two can answer this for me, because I've not engaged with the Quest ecosystem. Like, are all the studios that they purchase, like the games that they're putting out, are they Quest exclusive now?
So, most of them, but some like Beat Games, they still put out Beat Saber and all the sound packs and things on other platforms, but the majority of their games are exclusive for the Quest.
Asgard Wrath is exclusive.
It's like, is that not a problem then, right? Like, if the only, if like it's a less than a handful of independent developers are still making VR. Everybody pretty much who made VR has gotten away from it because it's really expensive. You need a specialized team, and the market is smaller, right? It's like you've seen companies that were known for making VR games independently kind of move towards more traditional games. If the only two games in town are like, the one.
There's some great studios left, like Shell Games, to make like I Expect You to Die. They did the Among Us VR game. They're pumping out some great stuff. There's some other great outfits like still making independent games. You've got things
Red Matter, because Red Matter was that's a banger. Red Matter and Red Matter 2.
I don't think that was Shell.
No, they're just a great studio.
They're great. So there's like tons of these smaller studios that are pumping out really great VR experiences, and then I think it's going to be the blockbuster experiences that you'll need to look to Valve and maybe like IO or Capcom, and I think there's going to need to be some incentive there. But I'm hoping like the Resident Evil 4 VR is just a 1-year exclusivity deal, and then that comes to PC or something, because I think that would be a really compelling use case on PC as well. But people use this, people mod games, like Flight Simulator, all of the like sim games, like Farming Sim, Truck Sim, all of that stuff. People love playing that in VR, and like those are the kind of games you only really play on PC.
Yeah,
and I mean, I guess there are other. Sorry, go ahead, Max.
I was just gonna say, if when you think about the number of people who own PCs specifically to play like Microsoft Flight Sim, for example, if that's the kind of thing you could get in VR, whether they want to do that is a different thing. But if that's like the place you play that, and it's on just the Decade, it's on Steam, it's on PC only, then that's because they don't have a VR option on Xbox like PlayStation do, so it's not going to be there.
Yeah, that's a good
but
point.
everything's an Xbox now.
Everything is an Xbox.
True.
Yeah, I wish they had put that ad out 2 days earlier. I can't wait to talk about that. Incredible stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think you guys are making good points. I think I still have a healthy amount of skepticism just in terms of I just don't believe that VR. I feel like this last 10 years, 8 years actually, but this decade of VR to me feels not that dissimilar than in the 90s when we were VR is going to be a thing. VR is a thing, and it's
I can understand.
It's
It's
not.
Stagnant.
It just isn't. It's very stagnant, and I think even the absolute best top standout games in the genre, right? Or in the space, right? They're few and far between, right? I think a lot of them. I guess this is the thing that I'll end on, and then you guys can have at it. Is I think of Xbox 360 generation, right? And when the Xbox Live Arcade came out, and there was a good, I don't know, maybe 2, 3, 4 year period or whatever, right? Where whenever you were talking about a game that was from Xbox Arcade or the PlayStation Network or whatever, you'd be like, oh yeah, it's good for a downloadable game. It's it's good for this kind of game.
Yeah, I get that. There are very few VR games that are just good.
This
games.
is just a good must-play video game, and I think that
but
you
there
can.
Are some.
There are some, but I think you can probably count them on two hands. And
but those experiences alone, I think, are enough for some people to just want VR.
For sure,
I love VR for fitness.
Beat Saber, right? People fucking love Beat Saber. I'm not trying to take away from that. Alex's was a really great game. There are plenty of great VR experiences.
VR. Oh,
sure.
They did a Wallace and Gromit themed course on that.
That's fun.
What a game.
And that's the thing is right, I've had moments in VR where I was like, this is captivating, but it's just do you have several $100s to plunk down on a specialty device that you need to have 9 feet of open space in your home for, and then buy full price games for it that are maybe as 30% as fun as a regular game. And it's just I don't know. If anybody can figure it out, you're probably right that it's Valve. And
I mean, they must be making money on the index, and they're still making them.
I wouldn't say that they must be.
I think they probably ended. I mean, for that price, they fucking are $1.50. There's no way.
Yeah, but how many did they sell?
Yeah, I know, and I think they're sat on stock. I think manufacturing on that ended years ago, and I think they're probably now just waiting to ramp up for the Decade and the Roy.
Yeah, and I guess that's okay. So I'm looking at a estimate. Let me see. This is from.
You can look at the stats on Steam to find out how many are in use.
Oh, okay. There you go. Well, from the Valve Index Wikipedia page, it says that it was estimated that they sold 150 sets in 2019 alone. So it's not terrible for a VR headset. So it's who knows? But it's if that was the bulk of sales, right? It was that initial year, and then it's trickled since then. I mean, I don't know, right? Who knows how much they spent on R&D, right? But I mean, you're probably right. They probably did break even on it, or at least make a modest profit, and maybe that's enough to keep experimenting with the tech, because ultimately it doesn't matter if it loses money, because Valve is flush with cash, because Steam is the de facto place to play PC games. So it's they can subsidize,
and they're a private company, so they can do what the hell they want.
Yeah, so if they think it's worth it to just experiment with the technology and to stay in the game because they're gambling on the fact that eventually VR is going to make a turn, and if they're one of the only games in town, then that's a huge opportunity for them. Yeah, it might be as simple as that. But yeah, I do kind of, I don't know. I just feel for 8 years in, I would expect us to be a lot further along in the evolution of this as a way that people interact with media in general, right? And I just don't feel like there's ever been that groundswell of support for it, aside from, the very vocal, very active base that is involved in VR, people really love it, but like, you know, what percentage of gamers is that? What percentage of you know, your potential, you know, customer base makes up that audience? And I think it seems to be an increasingly small number, you know?
Oh, sorry. I appreciate that Valve still does shit like that. Like, I really appreciate that for Valve, and like as
For sure.
as someone who likes when stuff like that happens, you know.
And to Steve's point, I think it's really cool that they're happy to gamble on something like this, and that they don't need it to be a massive success for it to be worth doing, you know?
Every time you say, we had this in a few episodes before, of like, oh yeah, Valve's privately owned, it's like that. It all makes so much sense, doesn't it? After a while,
Yeah. Gabe's like got, you know, more than 50% ownership in this company. So what he says is what is done.
Well, and they have the flat structure and everything too, right? Like they're just so non-traditional. Like trying to compare them to, we were bringing up PSVR 2 as a point of comparison. It's like literally you can't compare them because they're totally like the corporate structure is totally different. The number of employees are totally different. The metrics for success and how money is made, and it's a totally different ballgame. So yeah, I don't pretend to be an expert and say like what are they doing or whatever, right? Like they know what they're doing, but from the outside, right? Like as somebody who's, you know, just looking and being like, what is the play here? It is confusing to me because, you know, like to your point, Steve, I was a naysayer of the Steam Deck, but that was a lot more to do with my belief that they wouldn't have follow through on it than it was that the product had no.
Yeah, like your feelings have shifted on this. You think it would be a decent product, but is there a market for the product?
Yeah, it's like it might be the best VR headset in the world, but does anybody care? Like, is that enough? Like, will there be enough people that are willing to show up and pay for it, even if it's affordable, even if it's better, even if it's this, if it's that? Like, if it, you know, the Steam Deck is already a niche product, and we talked about how, like, when it made 1 million units in its first year on the market, that was a huge win. It's like, I mean, Jesus, like, the metric.
Let me say, like, to sell that Steam Deck, we got a new Portal game, right? What if they just do that with this thing?
I was thinking Portal VR because they've done Half-Life VR. The logical next guess is, can you imagine going through like an infinite portal? Like
I feel like it would make you sick. I don't know how you do that. How do you do the momentum of that without making you feel ill?
Man,
Close your eyes.
do it. You just do it.
Yeah,
I mean, promise the experience. Mate, if you did that in real life, you'd be sick. So
yeah,
like, Boneworks is like that. Like Boneworks is kind of similar vibes to that, and like people can play it. You just have to kind of get used to it.
Also, it's totally a thing that can be solved with technology. I'm so confident in that. And when you look at how advanced Half-Life Alyx is compared to like 90% of VR games, it's like, yeah, they got it. I'm very confident they got it in that regard. It's just like, are you going to spend $700 to play that game? Like that one game?
Some people would, like, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
What if it was Spider-Man VR? You know, you're telling me you wouldn't be like, I want to pay $700.
How sick is it going to make me? That's my same problem. I don't know that you can do that without making me feel sick.
When Labo VR first came out, and I wanted to, it was the building experience, I wanted all of that, and I was like, cool, that was fun, I'll put it away. And they were like, we're going to add a VR mode to Breath of the Wild so you can experience that in VR. And I was like, okay, all right, let's try this out. Oh my God. Imagine a 30 FPS, half 720p shared between both eyes. So it's what?
It's like Google goggles or whatever it was.
Basically, yeah, you switch in there and you're doing Breath of the Wild and the camera's moving around as you move around. I was immediately like it was awful, truly horrendous.
Yeah, but now like we've got tech now, like that's been in the Quest for years that, you know, it does like frame interpolation. We only need to get to 45 frames per second for you to not feel sick anymore. It used to be we had to get to 72. We can now get to 45 and you don't feel ill.
Yeah, and you're right. There's been a lot of major advantages in the tech and everything. It's just like, I don't know. I think there's also some fundamental problems with it that like, it's not super comfortable to have shit on your face for hours and like and it's like, who knows, right? Like, I think there are so many examples of technological things that we were like, who needs this? Who is this for? And then eventually it becomes, you know, I'm sure there will be a point in my lifetime where everyone owns a VR set and they are totally like, you know, baked into the culture, but also they might not, right? Like, it's like that does happen. There are ideas that just don't pan out, and like, in 10
I'm looking
years to
forward
have
to-
made so little progress, it does feel a little bit like, you know.
Yeah, sometimes it's like that though, and then you get to a point where it's just like, oh, look at mobile phones and how slow it was, and then we got the iPhone, and then since then every phone has looked the same since 2007.
Yeah, sometimes
really.
somebody
We've
just
made
cracks the
hardly any
code.
progress. Yeah,
Yeah, you're right.
it's all it takes sometimes.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love a black brick. I love a glass brick. Yes, please.
All right, folks. Well, let us know what you think. Are you excited about Valve's new colorways for the Steam Deck? Are you going to pick up this white OLED deck? If not, is there a color or like maybe like a game theme waiting in the wings that you would definitely bite on, that you like, this would be mine, I would absolutely pick it up day one? I'd love to hear like what people are looking for out of that, because, yeah, I mean, I think I would love to see them do like a Design Labs thing someday, something like that. I think that could be really cool. But we talked about the advantages of the limited edition stuff, and I think that's also very cool. So, interested to see how people feel about that, and you know what their general reactions are to it. And then, of course, are you gonna be a day and date, Deckard and Roy purchaser, right? Are you ready for the next generation of VR? Are you ready for Valve's next generation of VR more specifically? I'm very interested to hear how people feel, because it's clearly a divisive issue. So make sure you write in. Let us know how you feel. Let us know what you want to hear us talk about on next week's show. Go check out our sister shows, Nintendo Noise and the Flip Screen Games podcast. Join the Discord. Keep the conversation rolling on over there. Go support us on Patreon. However you want to get involved, you can do all that and much more at flipscreen.games. That's the website. Go over there, click on some stuff. It helps us out a whole lot, and it won't cost you a pretty penny unless you want to go above and beyond and become a Patreon supporter and help us keep the mics and the lights on. However you choose to get involved, head over there. Thank you so much. We love you. We'll see you next week. I've been Pete. He's been Steve. He's been Max. Bye!